On the weekend, my son David and we decided to build garden benches and a table. We saw it in a video of April Wilkerson. She made it in a kind of similar way. We didn't got the same wood, so this year is 4.8 by 8.7 centimeter construction wood. We got that from our local supply, Holz Posling, and we used a miter saw to make actually all of the cuts. So here David is putting a mark for the right size. We had a plan made in a 3D software and wanted to then continue making all straight cuts in the first place and then making the miter cuts in a second step. Here I'm just showing David again how to work with a miter saw. So it's always very important that you keep your hands out of the of the running blade, of course. And there are some other security things, like it makes sense to switch the saw off when it's still down, wait until it totally stops and then put it up. So, and then we just went on and made all the cuts. In the beginning we laid out all the woods which had very nice surfaces, and this is what is now here on the bottom. So we had 9 pieces for the tabletop and 2 times 4 for the benches. For repetitive cuts we put in a little stop block so that we could repetitive cuts. Was a bit wobbly next time, or we would probably screw it a bit better in. But for cutting construction wood, a miter saw is really a game changer. So once we were done with the straight cuts, David here is starting with the miter cuts. It looks that his hand is too close to the saw, but this comes from the perspective of the saw. Actually, the clearance is okay. So, and then again, a lot of miter cuts had to be done. And then we could finally start. Oh no, here, of course, this is the support poles for the benches and the table, and we put it in here some rabbets. We will later see what that is. So here David is using the router to sink the holes for the screws. Actually our screws were a bit too short, so we had to sink it here, and we had to do this for a lot of these crossbars. Here I'm clamping together the crossbar for the table legs. It's everything made from the same material, and it needs to be as square as possible, of course. So first thing was to clamp the crossbar, then to see if they align on top. and then measure the distance from the crossbar to the top. And of course from the crossbar to the bottom of the legs. So once that was correct enough for me, I then started to drill the holes for the bolts. These are M8 bolts I was using, and I used 2 on every side to prevent this whole set from bending. So M8 screws, I drilled an 8mm hole, and then I used some force to get it through the holes. And here I'm finishing it with a washer and a nut. I had to remove the clamps to drill the second hole in there. But in this process, it's always you do the first set of the legs, and the second will become much easier. So you learn with every step there. So here are the shorter pieces. These are the legs for the benches. But the process is the same. I was just pre-drilling the holes in the crossbar, so the process speeded up a little bit. So again, washers and nuts, and then I screwed it, everything nice and tight. So now it was time to assemble the tabletop. We screwed the first crossbar in to the middle and clamped it and screwed it, and then we applied some glue to get a straight or get a 90-degree angle connection there. So once the glue is dry, it won't move in itself anymore, so it becomes very stable. When you apply glue, then the screws are actually more used to hold it in place, to clamp it while the glue is drying. Afterwards, the connection of the glue is much stronger than the screw itself. So here we screwed the wooden pieces on both sides, then we disassembled it, applied the glue, and then assembled it again. So we did this in several passes. We clamped every board to prevent the screws from creating a space between the crossbar and the board itself. So it worked out very well. Here we clamped the legs for the table, and here you can actually see how that should look like in the end. So we clamped it, screwed again an 8mm hole, and applied one big screw and tighten it again with washer and nuts. Here are the crossbars, which are more in the center, and here you can see the support pool on the one side. It's creating this diagonal angle to the leg, and it will prevent the leg from shaking. They are actually clamped in between, but I added one screw to hold it in place. and then we screwed in the crossbars in the center, and it makes a very, very strong table. So you can actually stand on the table and the table won't shake. It's a pretty nice thing. That's actually what we saw in the video of April as well. So now the table was almost ready. We took the track saw and saw in here a nice edge. And I'm so happy to get this one. It's just amazing how nice this saw works. So we did this on the other side as well, and here I'm using a router to create a nice round edge. It's a bit hard on the sides where all the end grain of the wood is, because they are not too flat. But in the end it worked out and I was very happy with it. Then it was time to give the whole table a nice sanding. And this is the next day. David was still a bit sleepy, so I started to assemble the benches by myself. And it's almost the same process. So I used these little spaces in between, added the crossbar, applied some wood glue. It's a water resistant wood glue. Then I clamped everything and put it in the screws. It's always a good idea to wipe off the wood glue when it's not dry. Here I added the legs on the other side, so that when you try to put together the benches and the table, the legs won't be in the same position, so that you can get it closer together. Washers, nuts, and you can see that the ends of the screws stick out, so I had to cut this off and round it a bit, so to get rid of the sharp edges. Here again the support pole is holding the legs in position, and that's almost it. So of course I had to saw the edges again. Did this with both sides of the benches, and then I came back with a router and gave it some nice round edge here. Some more sanding. So since I was sanding this inside, I of course used the shop vac to get rid of most of the dust. It's still pretty nasty. It's just everywhere. So it's another sunny day. I'm using an wood oil because I wanted to have them in a brownish tone, so that it fits better into nature. And it's a wood oil for outside. I thought that this step would actually be much faster, but it took a lot of time, and it of course took more oil than I expected, so I had to go to the Home Depot and buy some more. And this is always something what is more expensive. So here you can see the finished benches, and yeah, here it's in use already. So we're having a little barbecue to celebrate. So thanks for watching.
Good again.